Mediation news for this Tuesday. We'll have updates for you throughout.
Jasmine, can you see the housekeeping slide up there?
Yes, I can.
That's good. Okay. So I'm just admitting people, and if everyone else can just read the housekeeping, please.
Good evening. Sorry, it's Luke. I can't see it. I've just got a black screen at my end.
Can anyone else not see it?
I can see it fine. I'm just wondering, is videos off, no cameras, like for us?
Yeah, can you turn your videos off? And you'll see in the housekeeping, if you can see that housekeeping slide that's up, it'll have what to do. So videos off, microphones on mute. You really don't need the microphones on at all. And if they are on, what happens is that Jasmine and I will experience lots of feedback, and so will everybody else in the seminar. So we'll just have to keep admitting people for a little while.
Please. If everyone can hear me, I'm not really sure what's happened, but it seems Lee's dropped out for a minute. But whoever that is, can you mute your microphone?
Hello?
Samantha, can you mute your microphone, please?
I'm going to try to open it in Zoom.
Okay, just give us a minute, everyone, while we're getting everyone joined in.
It's very hard to hear, actually.
Hello.
Hello, Lee. No, there she is, right.
I'm not sure what happened there, but I was
No.
talking and couldn't see
Oh.
anyone.
Okay, all right. Well,
Now
good
we're
for that, I
going
think.
to actually stop admitting people very soon because we're running family law workshops, the sort of thing that we are going to expect court rules. So if a judge wants you to be there at 9:30, you need to be there at 9:30. So we've let everybody know what's going to happen. And what's really unfortunate is that almost 200 people have registered to this. And if you're not in the next minute, and I know they can't hear me, but if you're not in the next minute, 6:09 is going to be too late for this meeting, for this seminar. So I'm going to share my screen for a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to hand over to Jasmine. So just let me know if you can see this PowerPoint screen, everyone.
Yep.
That's the housekeeping. Very good. So we've all seen that. And here we are here at our first presentation with Jasmine. And I'll just introduce Jasmine. You can see her there. She should be one of the few people with their videos on. Busan, can you turn your video off, please? Thank you. Jasmine was Mediator Peacemaker of the Year for 2021. It's a national award from the Dispute Resolution Centre of Australia. I sometimes get that mixed up and call her Peacemaker Mediator of the Year, but she doesn't seem to be offended. She's been called a few things, and my favourite is the ex-whisperer. So you've heard of the horse whisperer, there's all sorts of whisperers, but the dog whisperer. Jasmine's being called by a prior student the ex-whisperer. And I do think this is sweet, funny, and fabulous because this is an area of mediation, because it's not business mediation. Family law is a really emotion-driven, not that business law isn't either, but it's involving your assets and your children. So I think that is a sweet, beautiful, and fabulous label to be tagged with, because that's not really happening in this area of the law. So I think that's a very cool tag. And if you call her that, she'll be a bit blushing, but okay with that, I think. So Jasmine is the principal of separation, of parenting after separation. She's a mediator. She's a family dispute resolution practitioner. She's got a very busy practice as a mediator, and she also runs lots of wonderful courses. And we are going to do a seminar on that probably in the next couple of weeks, and then run that one either as a recording or just run it live for half an hour or so to describe, which Jasmine and I have realised is one of the major problems in family law, is that people don't understand the difference between a parenting problem or a co-parenting problem and a family law problem. They can happen concurrently, and a parenting problem can turn into family law. There's the parenting problem, the co-parenting problem. And if you don't fix the co-parenting problem, you're going to continue to have more problems. Hopefully my internet keeps working. I've got Elon Musk on board here. I'm on Starlink. So before we get started, I just want to, there's a disclaimer here. We aren't giving you legal advice. We aren't giving you professional advice. This is a free education seminar. So if you need legal advice, go and get some. If you want professional advice from Jasmine, You can go to parentingafterseparation.com.au, sign up for one of her courses or engage her as a mediator or any other mediator that you wish to talk to. But this course is for education only. The workshop is going to be split up into 4 parts. We're going to run a quick poll. I'm going to let these next 4 people in, then too bad for everyone else. And it's just a bit about who you are. There's only 4 questions. We'll run the poll, and then we'll hand over to Jasmine. There'll be, don't forget, an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each slide, and also potentially at the end of each section. If there's still some questions, please put them in the chat. I will have a look at them, and then I will put them to Jasmine at the end of the slide. Please, no comments at all about the family court, or if you've got a grudge against it, please don't write it in this chat. That's not what this seminar is for. Picture yourself in a small lecture theatre. That's where we are. And so that isn't something you'd stand up and shout out in a lecture theatre, so please don't do it here. And at the end, there's just going to be a really short survey to fill out. So I'll let the recalcitrants in, and then we're not letting anybody else in. Getting very close. Okay, that's the last lot of people we're letting in. And I want to do a welcome to country. So I'll just stop sharing my screen. In the spirit of reconciliation, Family Law 101 acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So I'm going to hand over to Jasmine now. And just give Jasmine a minute to.
I just need to share my screen, but I'll.
Yep.
Yeah.
So has that allowed you to be co-host there, Jasmine?
I think.
Just see if you can share your screen.
Someone
Someone says, congratulations, Jasmine. Yes, really well deserved.
You can see that.
Yes, I can see.
Slide?
Yep, family mediation.
Great.
I'm gonna turn my mic off now, Jasmine. Just let me know if.
Okay, just making sure everything's on this end. And let monitor any comments. I'm not used to such large groups on Zoom, so everybody might just have to bear with me. But thank you, everybody who has joined, for joining us here tonight. I appreciate that sometimes you get bombarded with information in family law, and I aim to make this as client-friendly, student-friendly as we possibly can to help those of you that are going through this to understand the process a little bit more. I've got quite a bit to get through, but at the same time, it's not too much. It's not going to be overwhelming for you. Actually, before we start, I just want to give a shout out to Lee herself, actually, and the Family Law 101 group, which in my opinion is the only group that I've come across sharing information about family law that is well monitored and well supported and gives accurate and really fabulous information and advice. So you're in good space. If you're some of my previous students who have joined and aren't members of Family Law 101, I strongly recommend that you join. Right, so this webinar, this presentation is about you getting the most out of mediation. And I appreciate that some of you have tried mediation and it's failed. And I hear all the time the consensus that mediation was a waste of time or a waste of money. And as a mediator, that makes me reflect very deeply on, well, what can we do better? And why is it that people are having this experience? And there's a number of reasons for that, so we're going to go over them. So what we're going to get through this evening is why mediation fails and some of the common mistakes that parents make, that people make. We're going to talk about the difference between being child-centred and being child-focused, and hopefully getting better results in your parenting matters as a result of that. I've got feedback coming through for some reason. Then we're going to look at knowing what's in and not, in fact, in your control. The emotional and practical preparation that's required. And we are going to address the difficult personalities. There was a lot of questions about that in the group about, where we're going to deal with the narcissists and where we're going to deal with, the more high conflict personalities. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips on that and, how not to destroy your soul. And then we're going to go into parental alienation and talk a little bit about that in the context of mediation and also parental estrangement and why it's important that you understand the difference between those. So with all of that in mind, what I hear frequently, I think what any mediator would hear frequently is that we can't agree on anything. People will say that they haven't been able to find any point of agreement. And so this then escalates the conflict.
Recording in progress.
And things become, exacerbated and start to get out of control. So I'm going to share with you my favourite quote in relation to being a peacemaker. And for some reason, I can't move my screen. There it is. Right. So peacemaking does not mean passivity. It is the act of interrupting injustice without mirroring injustice, the act of disarming evil without destroying the evildoer, and the act of finding a third way that is neither flight nor fight, but the careful, arduous pursuit of the reconciliation and justice. Now, that's a big statement, but I think the thing that you should all be able to take away from that is interrupting injustice without mirroring injustice. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I try to get across to people, that we can disarm evil without destroying the evildoer. So we can disempower them by not buying into their stories, and we can interrupt their patterns. People hear me talk about pattern interruption quite a lot. And we can interrupt their patterns that are leading to all of this without becoming who they are or becoming what they are. And that's the one thing that we need to be very careful of. So I'll leave you with that thought as we go through the slides. Now, this is a bit funny. So I'll tell you in a moment, but this is the basic purpose of mediation, which most of you probably know, that we're here to navigate disputes through the court process. When parents can't reach an agreement, they come to a mediator to get a section, or to try and mediate. And if that's not successful, then we can give a Section 60I certificate. As an FDRP, so a regular mediator can't do that. It's only people who are trained in family mediation. It's a strictly confidential process, and your mediator can't be required to give evidence or to talk about your matter outside of the mediation, apart from perhaps with your lawyer. Look, the family court has a very strong emphasis on mediation, and especially now with the merger of the court where they're sending people back to FDR, and because they have a very high desire and they know that people can resolve these disputes when they're in mediation, and that the vast majority of them actually don't need to go to court. And so that's why they're now sending people back. And look, we follow a strict process to determine suitability, and I can talk about that more down the track, but I know that it's going to be a question that some people have, and I hear it quite a lot, which is about why they never got an opportunity to mediate and that it was deemed unsuitable. So I'll get to that, but it's usually around domestic violence. But what I found funny about this today was I got an email from a lawyer who'd written an article about mediation, and it was intended for an explanatory note on mediation. And I thought, oh, well, this might be interesting with this coming up tonight. And I read it, and it's pretty much what I've got on the slide here. And I thought, well, congratulations on your law degree, because that's all it's really telling people. This is not, when we give out this information, and I've been guilty of it in the past as well, when we give out this information, we're not telling you what you need to know about mediation. And that's the purpose of what we're here for. So mediation is also available to parents for ongoing conferences to assist you in navigating smaller disputes. that we're there to assist you as your children grow up and needs change, their care needs change, your needs as parents change, or you might move on to a new relationship. There can be a whole range of things. And it facilitates the ability to seek clarity about issues in a safe manner. So if there's something that you don't understand and that's causing conflict, you can come to a mediator. We can, troubleshoot things with you. We can reach out to the other side and we can have a conversation. So it doesn't have to be that formal process that you've heard about. There's a lot more to mediation, and private practitioners in particular can support you throughout your co-parenting journey. It does not have to be a one-off. We are available to you, and there's not enough uptake of using us as an ongoing service rather than as a shortcut solution straight to court, or well, we tried mediation, it failed, and so now we'll go to court. The other thing that we can do is, and we can do this in like your initial FDR process as well, but is involve the voices of the children via a child consultant in mediation. And if anybody's got any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them in a little bit. And, we provide a space for education, for being able to give you perspective, to help you with your personal development. And in a lot of cases, one of the primary things that's necessary is communication skills, because unless you hear it from somebody like us who is here looking from the outside in and trying to help this family in front of me, how can I help them get through this? It's that perspective that we bring that can be very beneficial for you going forward in enhanced communication, how to respond better, how not to buy into conflict. Now I should ask, does anybody have any questions about that? Have we got any questions so far? I'm not sure if I can. No, yep, all good. I'll just get rid of that. Right. So in relation to common mistakes and why mediation can fail, I've written you a pretty long list here, and I'll go through them one by one. And again, feel free to ask me any questions at the end. But sometimes we get parents obstructing the process itself. Now, this can be somebody who's not sharing the right amount of information. I mean, a lot of people know about, the next one I've got there is not giving full disclosure. So we know about full and frank disclosure in financial matters, but sometimes in your parenting matter, it's about, mental health struggles, or, external factors that are going on, new relationships, or, there's lots of obstructions that can occur. But then there's also, blocking the process with not being willing to attend, or not being receptive when we're trying to help, not listening to us as we're trying to help guide you through this process. So yeah, like parents obstructing the process is sadly common. And it's not usually both, it is usually only one. There's usually one party that's trying to do the right thing. So the third one down there is being aggressive or hostile to the mediator or to the other parent or other party. Now, I've experienced this on a couple of occasions, and it doesn't serve you well to be hostile, particularly to the mediator, but certainly to the other party. I understand that mediation is an uncomfortable experience for a lot of people, and that actually, in my opinion, falls on us, because that means that our preparation of the parties perhaps hasn't been good enough. But going to a mediation in a mindset that is aggressive, that is dogmatic, that's got this sort of very one-eyed view of the way things are going to be, does not pave the way for negotiations to take place. And particularly when you've got somebody who might be feeling fearful, they might be, they might be uncomfortable, they might be feeling, quite threatened by the whole process. Being aggressive really does not help that. Trying to solve 10 years or 10 plus years of disputes in in a single day. That's, you know, we're mediators, we are not magicians, and our pixie wands just don't work. Sometimes they do, but it's impossible for us to unravel the history of a relationship in a day, or be expected to. And that's where sometimes this kind of aggressive stuff comes in as well. It's people wanting to drag up everything in the historical. And part of our preparation, and I think most mediators would do this, but is to try and you know, get across to you that you know, we're not going to be able to focus on a lot of the historical stuff. I heard a counsellor say once, or a psychologist say once, if it makes you hysterical, it's historical. And that's something that you need to deal with in therapy, not in mediation. Now, not understanding how to negotiate is another skill set that's often lacking in parents, and this is through I offer no judgment here. A lot of people don't have the skill set to be able to negotiate. They don't understand what it means to be able to give and take and to look for a win-win solution. So lack of preparation, which we're going to talk about in a little while as well. Being unwilling or unable to consider alternatives. And the word unable there is intentional. Some people simply do not have the personality type to be able to think outside of themselves. Some people can be taken there with some coaching and some support. Some people just simply can't get there. And a few of you are probably nodding your heads going, yep, that's my ex. Being dogmatic. So by that, I mean being very, you know, dictating or trying to dictate to me or to the other parent of exactly the way this is going to be. That's destined to fail in a mediation situation. And poor communication skills, as I said. And I'm willing to also say that unskilled mediators, you know, may be the reason why your mediation has failed, or also aggressive legal involvement. And, you know, any of the lawyers in the room might well, actually any of the lawyers that are here would probably agree with me, because the aggressive ones tend not to turn up to these type of events. But when we do have a legally assisted mediation as a mediator, it's very important that the lawyers in the room are working with us to help solve the issues of this family and not battle something out just so you can get to court. And so you've got to be careful of that. I'm a big one for personal responsibility with parents, and well, with all of us in everything that we do, but that your lawyer is working with you for the best interests of the children and of your family as a whole, in being able to navigate this out of court. Have we got questions there before I go on? How can mediation work if the other party has zero respect for court orders? Yes, well, Tony, that's a good question. I might come back to that one because it's probably a fairly long answer. But in those situations, mediation often doesn't work. I mean, if they've got no respect for court orders, in a general sense, yeah, they might not comply, but it comes down to how much preparation work has been able to be done. And at the moment, the way we mediate is that we do an intake interview and then we do the mediation. And that intake interview is generally an hour to an hour and a half. That's not time for us or the space for us to be able to prepare somebody to get them to that point of negotiation. So really, in the long run, my answer for that is having more preparation, more pre-mediation work, and less this idea that we come for an intake, we go to mediation, because people don't have those skills necessarily already. And I like to work with people until they have got those skills. So that's the answer for that one.
Jasmine, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Lee again. There's a question about what's happening when it fails, and that the person who asked that, I'm not sure if you came in late or if you've been listening to Jasmine, but it's and I think this is the biggest problem, the common mistake, is people thinking you can solve it in a day. At the moment, I'm doing a mediation that was really high conflict. I have to say the parties were well and truly wound up by their legal practitioners. Good on them. You know, if you're in my group, I have a low regard for legal practitioners winding up their clients and sending inflammatory for it. So it's taken me about 4 sessions. So 4 sessions, not a day, because that wouldn't work, 4 sessions individually with these clients to get them to firstly trust me, and for them to trust that they're not going to get done over by me, that I'm not on anybody's side. And I think it was really at the 4th session that the dad, and it's for property and children, that the dad, he got it too. 4 sessions, and he just went, I think we're going to get somewhere. And then I spoke to the mum, and it just took 4 sessions. And I have a commercial background with a lot of negotiation on high volume and high value, up to 100 million, 200 million, $300 million. And we work off 7. So if we were going to bid on something, and I'm the lawyer for that, and I have to go and look through the contract, then I've got to negotiate this contract with the other side, who don't want to change any of these clauses. They want to be mean and nasty to us and whip us. But we are talking to the lawyers on the other side about changing this contract to make it fairer. It might take me 4 or 5 sessions to get them to see I'm just trying to be reasonable. But once that happens, it's hardly ever taken me to the 7th. So the 7th in business is how many no's you might get before you get a yes. And that works also, in my view, in the mediations that I've conducted in family law, that here were 2 people just that I'm dealing with at the moment. They're very high value couple. So they've got plenty to fight over. They've got quite a few children. And I think that it takes more. So please listen, that's such an important thing to understand. It's not just a one day, maybe it's half a day that you book, and then you wait a few days, and then you book another half a day. And instead of thinking, well, I need my Section 60I certificate, it's I'm going to book 4 sessions with this mediator, and then I'm going to see what happens after that. I'll just turn my mic off now. Okay.
Thanks for that, Lee. No, that's a really valuable insight, and I think it speaks to it speaks to what I feel like should be across the board in terms of mediation. But you as parents can also ask for this. You can, you're probably not aware that you're not ready to mediate. So previously, those of you that are here now might start to kind of go, well, maybe I can try and get some coaching around this, or some support, or how can I improve my communication skills, or understand about negotiation and when we're looking for results. So I'll leave that there, and we might come back. Do you work solely with one parent to assist with communication and negotiation skills? We can, by agreement, that I can do that in preparation for a client who is attending mediation with somebody else, no questions asked, and I do that quite a lot. But if I'm to be the mediator, it has to be time with you and time with them, and it has to be shared equally. Otherwise, there's a perception of bias. So, and that's another point that I want to make on this, is the perception of bias. Wow. So mediators are often accused of being biased and of taking the position of the other person. And perhaps I might go into this a little bit more at the end, but I think what I wanted to say is, if a mediator is challenging you in a private session or in an intake, you have, sometimes when we need to kind of challenge beliefs and challenge your perspective, because we can see, first of all, we have an inkling of what's going on the other side, and we have an inkling of what's going to happen in family law, or what's likely to happen, or what the likely outcome is going to be. And so we might challenge you, and in a way that is supportive, but like, is that really what you want? Those kind of questions. Have you considered this? Have you had legal advice? Those kind of questions. And some of them, when they're really unrealistic expectations of the outcome, then we might need to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And it can sound pretty harsh. And sometimes, but we're very caring and empathetic as a general rule. But sometimes people feel like they're under a microscope and that it's only happening to them. And what I explain to all of my clients is that you might be being challenged, but if you're being challenged, then there's a high chance that they're going to be being challenged as well. And sometimes it's simply because we are trying to help you. And so we're trying to get across to you what needs to happen. So when it's a perception, or when you have a perception of bias, or if you feel like it's been biased, I'm not saying that bias doesn't exist, it does. It's one of the hardest things for anybody to let go of is a bias in when they've taken a position. But we do try very hard to maintain a neutral position. It's the hardest part of our job sometimes. Right, so we're going to move on. So we're going to talk now about child-focused or child-centered, and what the difference of that is. I mean, none of you can actually speak back to me at the moment, but there is a subtle difference here. So I'll just flick over to the next slide. So to talk about child-focused, and this is what most parents are in tune with and have heard of. And being child-focused is something that is commonly spoken about in family law. You need to be child-focused, make sure that you're child-focused, make sure that what you say is child-focused. I probably say this in some of my courses. I've changed my views on this a little bit over time, although I think I've updated the courses in relation to this. But the idea of being child-focused is well-intentioned and the commonly accepted position of being in the best interests of children. The problem with it is that it's a linear or myopic opinion of each parent reflected at the child. So it's my ideas of what's in the child's best interest. I'm going to look at that child, I'm going to focus on that child, and I'm going to determine what's in their best interests, right? What child-focused means. And when you've got two parents that are doing that, then they're obviously not going to see things the same. They can't agree on anything, right? So they're going to have a completely different view of what being child-focused is. And it's generally driven by the wants or needs of the parent and not necessarily of the child. And it, in itself, the term child-focused creates conflict when parents can't agree or when they disagree on what is in the best interests of the child. So I want to open your minds to the concept of being child-centered in your thinking rather than child-focused. Now, the child-centered means, I mean, to me, it's the optimal position, and I think many therapists would agree, that, and mediators, but it means being attuned to the child's fundamental needs. So, and I'm going to pose some questions for you about this in a moment, but it's empathetic of the child's position in this family and considers what the child's experience of their life is in this situation after their parents have separated. And sometimes being child-centered means making a sacrifice in order to meet the child's needs. And that's a higher level finding, and it doesn't come easily. It's something that I actually had to do, and I won't go into that story right now, but it can be a very difficult thing to come to when you make a sacrifice and kind of go, well, actually this is what's truly best for the child, and it's not about my rights, it's about my child's life. And so being child-centered is this empathetic position that says, I'm going to imagine what it's like to be my child and what it's like to be my child in this moment. And if I'm making decisions for them, what are the implications for those decisions? Has anyone got any questions on that before I move on? No, can't see anything there. That's good. We can always come back to that. There will be plenty of time at the end for questions as well. So it raises the question, what's it like to be your child? And some of my students will have done this. They do this as part of the courses. But these questions are written for a chance to reflect on what it might be like to be your child. So if we can just go through these a little bit slowly, and I would like you all just to think about them in the moment, but what does it feel like for your child at changeovers? If you think about their perspective, if you put yourself in their shoes, if you were 9-year-old Tommy or 7-year-old Sally, what would life be like for you when you had to change over and your parents were you and your ex-partner? So it can be a confronting thought to even think about, but it's worthwhile digging a little bit deep and going in to think about it. How does it feel to be them? I can't see because my thingo's in the way. How does it feel to be them when they arrive at your place? What does it feel like? What things are they experiencing? What about when they've got to say goodbye to their other parent? Because this child's good experiences comes with, or positive feelings comes with negative feelings as well. They're not necessarily good and bad experiences, but their feelings, they're going to be happy when they see you, but they're also a little bit sad because they're saying goodbye. And so, and that's, this is generic, of course, it's not every case, but that's something to consider, that it's great that they're going to see you and they're happy to see you, but there's a little bit in them that's also a little bit sad, and they might worry about mum or dad or whoever it is that they're leaving, because their little lives are being torn. So, what does it feel like to be them? I can't see it, when they say goodbye. And, what about when they're saying hello to their other parent? They've got to say goodbye to you. So what are they feeling at that time? What does it feel like to them to have to leave you now and to actually say goodbye to you? And, we can sometimes be, try and get them to be stoic and it'll be all right, I'll see you next weekend. But what's it feel like to them? What's it actually feel like on the inside of them? And how does it feel to be them when they need to ask you something that needs approval from both of you? And this is probably something that would impact older children, not kind of preschool age children, but school age children, where, they might need to ask for a permission note or a note to, go and attend a carnival or a day out with school or whatever. But they need to ask both of you for permission, and they know that you always fight. So what kind of conflict does that raise in them, and what sort of feelings does that bring up for them? So obviously I'm not expecting you to give me any answers here, but I want these things that I want you to reflect on. And another question, this is a sort of little bit of a transference of empathy here, but what do they like most about their time with their other parent? And could you list those? Do you talk to your child positively about their other parent? And being able to reflect on that helps you to be able to be a better co-parent. So how do they feel when they sense conflict between their parents, right? So these are all the things that it pays to consider. And when you're going into mediation, just to put the mediation framework back on this rather than the co-parenting, but when you're going into mediation, these are the considerations that you need to start to think about. Of what's the impact of this going to be on my child on these decisions? And how can I make that? How can we go to mediation and make an agreement that's going to make this better for them, this experience of their life better for them? And that leads me to decision making. So have we got any questions before I go on? Because we're going into a slightly different part. Is this not a matter of perspective?
Some were comments. I think that's maybe more a comment, because of course people are going to have their own opinion about how they see their child might see something. The other question is about international travel and safety. All of these questions, I hope people can see, just one in a line of issues that someone might have that they could take to a mediator to discuss. So it's not just, could a mediator help me with this? A mediator, if you're prepared to go in there and with your heart open, with your mind open, they can help you on just about any problem and help you resolve it. So all these little individual problems that you're asking, can they help with this when you're worried about safety of the child in overseas? What about this? What about that? Yes, they can. They're not limited to 10 questions or 10 issues. You could take 100 issues in there, and it could be anything at all. It might be silly. I spoke to one doing this is. They'd finished all, so this wasn't mine, it was someone else's mediation. They had resolved all of the issues. The remaining issue was the parents were arguing over a poster somewhere. A poster, like the minutiae, goodness me. But yes, if you can argue about, not argue, if you can discuss about international travel, it's really anything that they can talk about. So if you post another.
You keep dropping in and out there, Lee, and I'm not sure if you've finished. There's a question just there that's popped up. What if teens speak what they want, but the other party doesn't want to consider that? My advice is mediation. Go to mediation, because this is a sort of situation where, well, it's a teen, so it's you know, might be very appropriate to get a child consultant to meet with the child and to get that voice and, you know, be able to express that. But you know, we'll get to. There'd be a whole lot of other stuff wrapped up around that, but in a nutshell, that's what I would say is go to mediation, because you know, we can help you with those things in terms of bringing the child's voice into the mediation, and or being able to just work out what their objections are, what the situation is, what the status quo is, what their fears are. We're going to talk about fears very shortly as well. And I can't keep up with all of these questions. It's a question, how do you come to a compromise position if the other party has a different opinion of what the child is feeling to yours? Well, that's exactly it. So, well, okay. So in being child focused, that is more common. In being child centered, then that's when a mediator can kind of like, so I get parents sometimes, not in every mediation, but I'll get parents to fill out that questionnaire so that I can get an understanding of what the issues are. And I'll find where there's actually a lot of commonality. There might be a lot of common ground between what they're saying, even though they're feeling very different about that. And they might not be able to see it because of all the microaggressions and the things, the positions that they're holding. So it's an exercise. It's more of a coaching exercise to kind of extract out what the actual story is. But normally what you're doing then, and we'll get to this, but normally what you're doing then is you're looking for common ground. Well, where do these parents' beliefs actually meet about what their child's experience is? So I hope that answers that, Andre. Feel free to reach out to me later on. Do you have any other concerns? So tightly focused list of considerations around co-parenting. Do you have other considerations in the list? Do you encourage parents to add their own considerations? Absolutely, that's a snapshot of a very long list. And so yes, absolutely there is. And depending on the situation, I mean, you know, I can make things as, they're only questions. I can write questions pretty easily, depending if there's something else that needs to be discussed. Now, okay, so I can see somebody sent me a direct message there. I'll deal with that later. I'm just going to close down the chat for now. So we're going to go into this next section now where we talk about decision making, the timing of mediation, practical preparation and emotional preparation. And you'll see there that the little quote that I've got there, which I have in my courses as well, is never rush decisions that have a lifelong impact on your children. And that to me is, you know, it speaks to when somebody makes a unilateral decision and they haven't consulted the other parent, or two people in a hostile situation, in a high conflict situation, craft some agreement that is ill thought out or hasn't really been considered, and it might lead to a long time of conflict. And so we need to get across to parents that they need to be able to take their time on these decisions. Right, considerations for when you're decision making. So again, in a child-centered view, what impact will this decision have on my children? And these are things that for every point that you're trying to negotiate over, that you need to be able to consider. What is the impact of this on my children? It could be a property settlement, right? What's the impact of this going to be on my children? assuming you have children. I don't think there's too many people who are here purely for property settlements. Hope not. I'm probably the wrong mediator. What practical changes will this decision mean for them? So in reality, you know, if we're making a decision over, you know, where the children are going to live, then what practical changes are they going to have to change homes every week? Is it going to be every second week? Is it going to be weekends? What's that going to mean like for them, for their getting to their after school activities? Now, most mediators will take you through this process in some form, but my emphasis is on getting you to really think about the children and what that feels like to them, and what impact it's going to have on them. What emotional disruption will it have for them? You know, might it be a positive emotional disruption? Might it be something that actually, you know, brings them out and makes them feeling better about the situation? It may well be. These aren't all negative things. What other factors need to be considered? You know, it's not just the one item that you need to discuss. There are other periphery things around that. So if it's that changeovers are now going to be on a Wednesday instead of a Friday, well, what about, you know, school sports on a Wednesday night or a Friday night, or, you know, whatever's going to disrupt that? And ultimately, will this decision that I'm going to make cause the least amount of harm to the children, or is it likely to cause the most? And that's something that I think the parents really should consider more in you know, coming to decisions and in pre-mediation. So when is a good time to mediate? Now, basically, whenever you're asked to mediate, if you feel that there are issues to be resolved and that outside assistance would help, mediate. If there's something that is requested by the other party to help resolve a dispute and they're saying, can we go to a mediator? Don't decline that offer. Take that offer up, because they're problem solving. They're going into solution focused mindset. Don't scuttle that by saying it's just a waste of time. Find a mediator that you can work with, that you can you know, hash these things out with. It's generally not going to be it's more likely to be a private mediator than a relationship centre service, but the family relationship centres also have the capacity to be able to work through some of these minor disputes for you as well. When you notice that your agreements aren't working as intended, and this happens a lot, people will craft a parenting plan, or they will make you know, make decisions that whether it's signed off as consent orders, but it's not necessarily working right. So that's a good time to go back to mediation. When you just need to discuss something like a pending issue, whether it's holidays or new partners or things like that, go back to mediation. So it's not just a gateway to family court. Okay. I'm going to have to crack on. I'll come back to the questions at the end, because otherwise we're going to go way over time. And I promised Lee I wasn't going to do that, but look, here we go. Now, emotional readiness, and this is a personal responsibility thing. So this is an on you thing. It doesn't matter what your ex has said, not said, done, not done. This is about you. So addressing your fight, flight, and freeze response. And there was a webinar, I didn't actually sit in on it, but there was a webinar through Family Law 101 recently where they talked about the lizard brain. This is back, right? This is your primary responses. But know where you're at with that. What's your normal reaction when it comes to conflict? What's your normal reaction when it comes to fear? Fight, flight, and freeze are driven by fear, fundamentally fear. And that is, I won't go into that whole spiel because it's a whole other lesson, but it's about addressing what's going on in the limbic system of your brain and your primal responses. And you do have to be aware of those. Does it make my heart race? Does it make me shut down and not want to, talk to anybody? I can't come to decisions and then I might explode. Does it make me just want to get up and walk out of the room? And, people have sometimes done that in mediation as well. So having a plan of the things that you're going to discuss and having an idea of what your agenda is helps to remain calm. avoid rigid thinking. And if you're somebody who thinks in very rigid ways, try and change those patterns and to think outside the square a little bit, start to become solution focused, which is the next thing I wrote, but look for solutions, not fueling problems. And there are some people who, will say, I'm not trying to be, difficult here. And it's like, well, yes, you are, because they're bringing up more things that are just, putting fire on problems. And so it's this idea of being able to look for solutions. Know your negotiable and non-negotiable points. Be prepared to consider alternatives, to be able to think outside the box, and avoid coming across as hostile or aggressive. I've already discussed that. And this one I think is really pertinent, though. Don't give the other side an audience, i.e. the mediator, to prove their point about you. And this happens quite a lot. I'll have party A telling me all of these horrible things about party B. Party B will tell me what an angel they are. And then we get into mediation and party B completely proves the point, and, acts in a way that is aggressive or hostile, etc. Now, in terms of practical decisions, one of the first things that people probably don't always consider in making decisions is, what is the nature of things as they stand at the moment, and how does that impact decision making? Because if things are really bad and you're going to have a co-parenting agreement, then what are all your checks and balances for knowing if this is working and knowing if this is not? When are you coming back to mediation to check in with somebody to see, right? So it's where your relationship is at is an important indicator of where you need to go in the future in terms of how you're going to navigate this. The small details of how things are intended to work, but what about I call them the oh no situations. So things that come up, you get stuck at work, you're caught in traffic, something happens, there's a, death in the family or a wedding that you want to go to or whatever. What do you do in those situations? And all of that has to be considered in your plans. And that is, usually something that needs to be discussed at mediation, but what do we do when something unexpected comes up? I won't bang on about the impact of these decisions on the children, because I think I've already done that for you. But a question, and this is more of a coaching based thing, but how will you know if this plan is working, and how will you know if it's not, right? And they're things that you need to think about in advance. You need to know what signs and signals to look out for when things are no longer working the way that you intended them to, and what's going to happen at the end of that. Right, we get to the fun stuff. High conflict personalities. So look, better to know the devil. I often say to people, be grateful that you've seen them for who they are, because once it's seen, it can't be unseen. Once you've worked out what somebody's personality is like, you can't unsee that. But it's like they've shown themselves to you. And so if you take an attitude of gratitude towards that, I know that's a big reach for some of you, but you can see it. And if you can see something, then you can work out the solutions around it. So learn strategies to break the cycle of conflict, and I mean that in a general term, not specifically in the terms of my course, but in improved communication, learn what to let go of, learn that not everything needs a response, and learn to manage your own emotions in relation to all of this. Be aware of microaggressions and triggers, the little things that are going to tick you off that are going to turn into big things. And look, where possible, say yes to the smaller things that you might want to say. The reason I say that is because people want to say no to everything because they're frightened that it's going to lead to bigger and bigger things. And sometimes that happens. I'm not saying that this is a blanket, you have to do it, but it also disarms them a little bit, and they, it's again disrupting patterns. There's actually a reason for that. And to always look to get clarity when you're dealing with somebody who's really high conflict. Get really good at asking questions. Can you explain that to me? What did you mean by that? What would happen if we, could agree to doing this? How would you feel about in those circumstances? So start to have like more questions in your, in your sort of toolkit of how can I actually extract out exactly what they're looking for in these situations? I don't envy anybody who has to co-parent with somebody who's a narcissist. It's a horrible situation. I haven't had to co-parent with a narcissist, but I have certainly had some pretty horrendous dealings with some narcissists. And I know what they like. I know what they're like when you've got to correspond with them. And it is ridiculously hard. There's an article on my website called Narcissist. It's about communication. It's about receiving letters in family court from a narcissist. It's worthwhile just having a quick little read, just under the article tab. So the non-negotiable co-parents, there's actually an article about this on my website as well. But you know, they fall under that high conflict personality type. They're usually reliant on two things. One is that you'll either give up or give in, or that you'll never give up, and so they get to fight with you for longer and longer and longer, and they love it. In either outcome there, the kids are going to lose. So, you know, I feel like it's better to try and work your way around those things. But if that's what you're dealing with, get help, seek therapy, coaching, education, support to manage yourself during this period. It's really hard. Again, I don't have a magic wand. I can't fix them. There aren't necessarily ways to get around them in every instance. Some of these situations you're just going to have to live with. So you need to get as supported as you possibly can, do as much for yourself as you possibly can, so that it has less impact on you and you're less likely to buy into the conflict and into the microaggressions of things that are going on. And yeah, don't expect them to change or apologise, because that's just not going to happen. Right, a brief word on parental alienation and parental estrangement. So a lot of people get this confused, and
I didn't really hear it.
Sorry?
How?
Oh, okay. Somebody needs to mute their microphone. Sorry, I thought that was Lee for a moment. Parental alienation is when a child rejects a parent that they had a previously loving relationship with prior to the separation. This is actually a really long list. I've just made it quite short for here. But when a child's been coached or coerced into choosing sides, and when a child is abducted or otherwise withheld from all contact and allegations have been unsubstantiated, that's the fundamentals of parental alienation. If you've been alienated, what you should do is get the appropriate support. It is a very difficult thing to go through, and I have given a lot of support over many years to people who have gone through this situation. But when it comes to mediation, choose a mediator who is parental alienation informed, and not everybody is. Not everybody will agree with your position. They might see the other side's perspective. But if you've got somebody who's PA informed, then you've at least got some hope of not having to, you know, bash your head against the wall, or it would feel like you are. And consider child inclusive mediation, and there's a whole lot of caveats around that I can discuss later or at another time. But obviously, if the child is already alienated, then child inclusive mediation might not be appropriate. But if it's the early stages, then it could be a good idea. But what I tell every parent is to take the high road and to not do anything that contributes to their allegations about you. And in general, I'll try and trick you into that. So that's parental alienation in a nutshell. So it revolves around a child who rejects a parent from which they had a previously loving relationship, and that relationship is only broken down after separation. And those allegations have been unsubstantiated. Because parental estrangement is the other thing that most people don't consider, but it is when a child rejects a parent because of the actions of that parent. So, and those actions might be directed towards the child or to the other parent, and that the child has witnessed those to the other parent. Or actions of your own behaviour, you know, might be substance abuse or, you know, driving recklessly or something along those lines, but something that you've done that you thought only impact yourself but might have scared a child. And so this can lead to what we call parental estrangement. And it normally applies that there's been a DV incident that's changed the child's perception of that parent. and yeah, so it's different to parental alienation. And I hear a lot of people saying I've been alienated, but then they tell me the history of family violence, and it's like, well, actually, maybe this is more an estrangement situation than it is. And it doesn't mean, like, and I said before, that parental alienation is unsubstantiated allegations of domestic violence in general. So if you have contributed to what's gone on and you are not seeing your children because of XYZ, you've got to go through contact centres, etc. Take responsibility for your actions, okay? You need to own up to that. Consult a therapist for ongoing treatment. Get as much help as you possibly can. Do a behaviour change course, an anger management course, or a personal development course, or all of the above. And only consider attempting reunification with your children at a time when you are mentally and emotionally well. That's that one in a nutshell. Again, happy to talk about it. So how to be your own peacemaker. We might fly through this a little bit, but become solution focused and start to think in a way that is looking for results. Now, in terms of control and what's in your control, we had this little image drawn up, and look, I absolutely love it, and it's got rave reviews. But within your control is your personal life, your emotions, how you feel, how you act, your personal space, the things around you, whether you're doing your dishes or not, your boundaries, your time management, all of those things are within your control. What's out of your control is all of those things within your co-parent. So their emotions, their physical space, the way they dress, even to some degree the way they might dress the children, and their reactions to things, their beliefs about things. That's entirely in their control. In joint control, when you have joint parental responsibility, but in an ideal world, is the health of the child, the safety of the child, their social schedule, their emotional needs. Everything that is focused on the child should be in joint control. But you need to learn to respect the spaces of each, of what's in my control and what's out of my control, and what are the things that I actually need to be focusing on. And that's me and the children, and what's in joint control. So always look for middle ground, and look, this is a skill again, but look for the things that you've agreed on in the past, how you reach those agreements. Consider the other party's requests, and do you really understand what their motivations are, and what are your motivations for wanting this outcome that you want, and why are they important to you? So it's really drilling down into some of these really important points that should underpin your decision making. What fears do you have? What things are you actually afraid of? What outcomes are you afraid of? And what fears do you think they have? Right. So because that helps you to be able to meet them where they're at, because you're going to need to be able to do that in order to be able to have be able to make a successful agreement. So yeah, identify the problems that whatever it is, that's when there's an issue that comes up, identify what it is that is the actual problem. Consider the issues that are arising because of that problem. So it might be that the problem is that Sally keeps being late for school. Well, what's the importance? That's actually pretty high. What's your solution? Well, I'm going to ask my co-parent to set an alarm at 15 minutes earlier because this is impacting Sally, right? So, and then listen to what they've got to say. They might say that it's, they might have an alternative, or their work schedule's changed or whatever, and you can start to have a conversation. But when you're dogmatic about it, you shut down all of that solution-focused work and you focus on dictating what you're going to tell the other parent to do. Yeah, look, your personal responsibility that I've mentioned a few times, but it's your responsibility, and even in mediation, to get your point across in a way that is non-confrontational, and to express your point in a way that states the true sentiment of what you're trying to say, to not buy into conflict and just to do your best. This is not something where I can sit on any moral high ground and say that 100% of the time you need to do all of these things that I've said. These are very hard to get your head around. And it's practice. It's like yoga or martial arts. It's a practice and it takes time. Always have a considered approach to the other person. A non-hostile approach will always have a level of empathy. That's very hard for some people. It's usually inquiring, so it asks questions and is considerate of alternatives. So this is a little bit of the breaking the cycle of conflict concept in how to break down and stop buying into conflict. We're just about at the end. So next steps in all of this is, after mediation, really, begin to heal from the grief and trauma of what you've gone through, attend counselling, engage in personal development or education, which you should have done throughout the process as well. Still have adequate professional support as you need it, and have adequate personal support, and look after your health and fitness, because all of these things are what are going to take you into this next part of your life, once you've been able to reach agreements, how you're going to live your life going forward. So get as much support as you need, because it's, crafting an agreement is not necessarily going to be the end of conflict. So get yourself into the best position that you can be in. And that is it. And that is a little bit about us. So any of the articles that I referred to are on the website, parentingafterseparation.com.au. And I'm going to open up the chat box, and Lee's probably, should I stop sharing the screen? Lee?
I'm just going to, can you hear me, Jasmine?
I can, yeah.
I'm just going to ask some questions, and I've asked everybody, if you've typed it already, type it again, please. They have to be general questions. Please don't ask a question that says, can you help me with organising a passport? Can you, if it's an individual question about if you can identify that thing as an issue, please don't ask it. Yes, you can be helped. Mediation can help you resolve either all of your issues or narrow the issues. So we've got someone here writing, my ex. Please don't do that. It's happening again. I've already said housekeeping says we don't want you to write about your matter. So if you have a general question, here's a general question. Someone's saying about, thank you for acknowledging parental estrangement. I think that's really important too. Was there a question in there?
Somebody has asked me a question here about what age the children can be included in mediation.
Yep, that's a good question.
It's via a direct message, so it doesn't disclose who they are, but it's a good general question anyway. Generally, a child consultant work will only be involved after the children are at school, so it's school age and above. And I need to kind of get this point across, that child inclusive mediation is not about asking the child who they want to live with. It generally involves play therapy and story extracting of the children. So, when there's...
just pause on the questions for a moment, people. Sorry, Jasmine, just pause on the questions. They're coming so fast, we won't be able to get through them. Just pause for a moment. We'll answer these and then do more. Pause, please. Thank you.
There is an awful lot there. The answer to your question is from school age and above, but it's not designed to get the child's voice to say where they want to live. It's more to get their experience of the world and to get of the family separation, and to get that fed back to the parents in the mediation, so that the parents have a better understanding of what life's like for the child. Can we find this graphic somewhere? Yes, I'll put it in the Family Law 101 group for you. I assume that was the control graphic, was it? Now,
Jasmine, there's a question about cost of mediation, and that does vary. But what I can tell you is it's cheaper than a lawyer. So
a lot cheaper than a lawyer.
And it's way cheaper than going to court.
I mean, obviously, family relationship centres will be much cheaper because they're government funded. Those of us in private practice vary anything between $2,000 and $10,000. I think probably a pretty broad sweeping thing. So it really depends on the individual in terms of private practice. Family relationship centres tend to have a long wait time, and it's a pretty strict process of intake, mediate.
Here's a good question,
yeah.
Jasmine.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jasmine. I'll put the questions to you then, so we can I can go through the chat. How do you convince someone that mediation is not just a tick box exercise before court, which is one of the things that what are some and I think maybe that could be coming if there's lawyers in the group, that a lawyer might tell your client that. That's one of my personal gripes, where lawyers say, get a Section 60I certificate. That's my personal gripe. I'm a lawyer, but it's a personal gripe with lawyers. You're actually making the mediator's job really difficult if you say that to your client. A Section 60I certificate might be an outcome, or might be the outcome, but please, if you're a lawyer listening, stop saying that to your clients. If you're a litigant, please don't go in there with the view that you're only trying to get a Section 60I certificate. There's a big chance that you can narrow your issues. You might go in with 10 issues.
Exactly.
And please don't go to mediation without a list of your issues, because you'll make the mediator's job much easier if you've got your 10 issues and the other person might have 25 issues. Some of them might overlap, but you could narrow that list down. So if it can't be solved, the mediator's done you a great service by now you've only got 4 issues to go into court with, not 10 from one and 15 from the other.
Yeah, I agree entirely with all of that. What was the actual question though again? Forgotten.
That was the question about
we've answered it.
Well, about getting them to be a tick box to convince them. And I think maybe send them the graphics when we put it up on Family Law 101 to this.
I'll
to
be
this
putting
seminar.
all of the slides will go up on 101, so you'll be able to see everything there. Yeah, next one.
Jasmine, someone's asked some example indicators for when the agreements are not working. Well, I would have thought that when it's not working, that's pretty obvious. So I'm not really sure what that question means.
Well, no. So let me just answer that a little bit. So, and this is the sort of thing that you can prepare yourself. And it requires a little bit of visualization. So what would be happening if things aren't going well? I would be feeling anxious. I would be getting frustrated. We would start to be getting narky at each other. There'd be some heated text messages, right? So it's identifying those kind of things. And then going, okay, all right, so these are the things that are happening. And that means that something's not working here. What's not working? And then start to think that through. So what way is what way can I start to think about these problems? And you might need somebody else to troubleshoot that with. And that doesn't have to be a professional in family law. That can be a friend. But it's like, what's actually going on here? But try not to preempt what it is that they're going to say, because the lack of perspective from what the other person's point of view is a big driver in conflict. So that's my advice there.
Then can you hear me, Jasmine? Next question. There's one here about, and I'll get Jasmine to clarify this. Remember, mediators aren't judges, but they can help you reach a solution that you could then turn into a parenting plan or turn into consent orders, which might change existing orders. So the question is, if mediation can assist with varying an existing parenting order, isn't this inconsistent with a court's ability to vary the order and the need for significant change in circumstances, unless I've misunderstood something? And yes, you have. I'll let Jasmine explain.
I'm not sure I understood that. No, we can't vary orders. Mediation can't vary orders. But a parenting plan, we can help you craft a parenting plan. If you're talking about when things aren't working, there are always ways to work within the orders, right? So let's say there's an order that pick up or be at after school, on a Friday afternoon, but that's not working. There's usually a provision in your orders that says, unless agreed by the parents. Hello, your mediator is here for the unless agreed by the parents when the parents can't agree.
Okay, next question. With the new rules, someone says, how specific do you get in terms of noting on a certificate that a party is not making a genuine effort to partake? What is the threshold of making an attempt?
Oh, that's a really hard question. That's a really hard question, and it varies from case to case, and there's a whole lot of complexity around that. I'd almost have to go and I'd need to know the circumstances of what was being declined or what was happening, and I'd need to go and read all of the provisions around that and try and figure out why that had been made. It's a very difficult thing. But know this, that when we have to issue a Section 60I, and I'm usually loath to do it, but when we have to issue a Section 60I, so not making a genuine attempt might be not responding to the email that mediators sent you. It might be not turning up, or it might be turning up and being really hostile or aggressive. There could be a whole lot of things around that. So I can't know for sure in that circumstance.
Okay, next question. Now this again is a bit more individual, and so it's in relation to relocation. Whether it's a relocation matter or it's a matter about you want someone to give you back the school clothes that you gave them last week when you had the kids 1 week on and 1 week off. I think that's an individual question and doesn't need answering. If that's why you're in mediation, because you're disagreeing. It doesn't matter if it's relocating or one party isn't handing over the school clothes or forgets the homework book or they've got a lunchbox. So you're there because you're struggling to agree on your own. And if you could consider that's what mediation is about, that it's recognizing that you can't do it on your own. Smart people persist with mediation because that's why you're there. You can't do it on your own.
Just also know though too that not every mediation has to be a big formal affair. We can also help you mediate smaller agreements on in a meeting with each of the two of you to get an assessment of what's going on. And then it might be an hour or so, right? So if it's some minor things, we can just meet with you for an hour. It doesn't have to involve, the threat of a Section 60I, etc. I think we've made that pretty clear. But these don't have to you don't necessarily have to be booking in for a whole day of mediation. You can get away with this much cheaper and book in for a couple of hours session and, get on with what you need to get done and then, go about your lives. So, yeah.
There's a question on support people. This is a good question about whether support people can attend mediation with you.
Yes, so generally they can, and in most cases there's a couple of preclusions that might come up, but in most cases a support person can attend with you, but the other side has an opportunity to know who that support person's going to be, and they have an opportunity to also bring someone.
Also, if they are attending, because the mediation's confidential, they're very likely, well, when I do them, I make everybody sign a
confidentiality agreement. Yeah.
Confidentiality agreement.
Yeah.
And if I have anything that has to be sent off to a third party, like an accountant, I also get them to sign one too.
Yes. Exactly.
Because what you don't want, I'm not an FDR practitioner, but what you don't want is something that slipped through the cracks and then someone's trying to get it admitted in court in a sneaky way.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, someone's got a question about, I'm not sure if this is general. My question was, do you have much experience with parental estrangement and turning parents claiming parental alienation to be child-centred? Whoop, that's just disappeared. And to see that legal advice leading to the PA path is detrimental. Oh my goodness, there's too many bits and pieces of things in that question. Please, if you've got that question, try and rewrite it into one line. See if you can.
I think I get what there's. Okay, go on with the next one. Yeah, go on.
Well, I just prefer that you did, because there's a lot of people wanting questions, and I'd prefer it as all adults we write one line, and then it's going to make it easier for everyone to have an opportunity. Have you seen good mediation outcomes where there is parental alienation or parental estrangement?
Yes, to both. Actually, not so much in mediation. certainly in when there's parental estrangement, and I can get across to a parent that that they need to take responsibility for themselves, that can have good outcomes. It's a hard conversation. It's not an easy thing to do, but it can have a good outcome. In terms of parental alienation, is not likely to be resolved at mediation. But are there good outcomes after alienation has occurred, both in the courts and out of the courts, or after court has finished? Yes, absolutely. Children often return to their parents that they were alienated from. So, yeah.
Here's a really good question, also a very positive question from Andrew about what courses can be done for the person, if there's been an allegation unsubstantiated or otherwise. Because remember, if you go into family court at an interim hearing, all of that evidence is untested. It's generally an affidavit form. People aren't getting cross-examined, and at the interim hearing, some temporary orders are made with a lot of caution by a judge, and we've talked about this at other seminars. They might make, if there's an allegation of this, a supervised order. Now, don't take that the wrong way. It's your opportunity to show that there's nothing wrong with you having unsupervised time with your children. They might send you off for a POP course. We talked about that in relation to the family report and DV allegations workshop. What Jasmine has, and she's very generously donating one of her courses to the group, and we'll draw that in April. And then Family Law 101 is going to donate 2 courses. So 3 lucky people can do some of Jasmine's courses from April. And I would just like, Jasmine, if you've got a minute, just to talk about those 3 courses, and particularly your flagship course of Parenting After Separation, because a judge, in my opinion and experience, wants to see insight, they want to see reflection, and they want to see change or improvement. So if you are someone who has been accused of, or even if you've done something, there's room for change. There is room for change, and courts all the time make orders for children to spend time with a parent, even when they've done something wrong, if they've got reflection and insight about their behaviour, that they've changed, and now that child's going to be safe with them. So doing these courses is one way to show a court that even if you think you've got done anything, why not, instead of, and I've written this on the group before, going down the rabbit hole of trying to disprove what the other person's saying who you are, why not show the court who you are? And you, by going and doing some of these courses, like Jasmine's, also Laurie Brooks, who does POP programs, will show them that irrespective of an allegation, you are prepared to go and do a course, even if it's an anger management course, to see what it's all about for your child. So I'll just pop over to Jasmine again. She's got 3 great courses on there.
Before I talk about the courses, I can see Andrew's question there, and he's actually asking specifically about courses that can be done for a person who's been accused. And there is the broad sweeping thing of there's a whole lot of stuff that that you can do, like when it's been unsubstantiated. So I think what you're asking me about is your personal development and your recovery from those allegations. I'd say my view is really, I don't have that yet. I'd love to. If I could clone myself, I'd be able to, bash out a couple of courses every year. But there are a lot of work to write and get out. So I don't have anything. But what I would say is that attending counselling would probably be a good idea. Go to get the healthcare plan or what have you, and to work through those issues. But also go to Teachable and have a look at the Bill Eddy courses and see if there's a course there, Bill Eddy, E-D-D-Y, and see if there is a course there that might be able to assist you, because he's got tons. And that's the most likely person that I can think of. Now, as for my courses, so we have Parenting After Separation, Breaking the Cycle of Conflict, and Anger Management course. And Lee and I were talking about this the other day. We wish we could call anger management something else. But the fact is that it kind of has to be called that, because that's what the court wants to see. But it's anger and all strong emotions. And, this is a lot of people who need to do an anger management course, are really resentful of the fact that they have to do it. But a lot of the feedback that we get is that people are really excuse me, that they're grateful in the end that they did do it. And, it's a matter of delivery of, being non-judgmental, etc. But, to me, it's like anger is a normal human emotion and we all have anger. And when we all have things that trigger us into anger. And this can also come into like breaking the cycle of conflict, of being aware of all of the triggers and the microaggressions and the things that tick you off. So, that's all. My courses are online, so you don't need to wait for me. You can just sign up.
There's a question about, and this may just be individual FDR practitioners, about they won't allow a support person in because the other person doesn't want one or hasn't decided to bring one. I think that's an individual thing.
That is an individual thing, and it's also a circumstances thing. So yes, so it is at our discretion. But normally there would be circumstances as to why that's not allowed.
Now, someone's just put this up, and I thought we already answered it, about what they can do to prove their innocence in unfounded DV. Well, that's exactly the same thing of unsubstantiated allegations. Whether or not they're substantiated, interim, nothing's substantiated unless you've been convicted and gone to jail. You might have a protection order in place without admissions, based on consent without admissions. All of these courses, forget about proving your innocence. That can be really hard because DV often happens behind closed doors, or it might be there's no injury, it's an emotional injury. So if I can suggest to you to stop trying to prove your innocence and prove who you are now. Prove who you are now. That's what the court will be interested in seeing. Who are you? Are you a bit woke? I know it's a wanky kind of word, but are you aware that, are you looking at your child and being child-centered? Are you recognizing that some of your past behavior or what you've been accused of, showing some insight into it? Who are you now? Show the court who you are now. So people seem to be focused on proving their innocence. Do not get stuck with right or wrong and yes and no and truth or false, please, in the family court. In family law, parents have obligations and duties, and children have rights. And the judge and the court is looking at how they're going to best serve the rights for those children, and who are the parents that should be given these obligations and duties. Who can they entrust them to when these two parents can't agree? So focus on who you are now. If you're going to go down that other rabbit hole, you'll have all sorts of mental health issues, and I know that people do, because they contact me all the time and tell me. It's way better to go, who am I now? I want to show them who I am now. I'm someone who's prepared to go and do an anger management course. I don't think I need to do one, but I'm going to do one anyway, because I want to show the course I'm prepared to do whatever it takes, so that they'll be letting let me see little Tommy unsupervised. Look, you're going to learn something. Are your courses family court approved, Jasmine?
The court doesn't approve any courses. It's not the court's job to approve or disapprove of any courses, and there are no court-approved courses anywhere in the country. Are they accepted by the court? Yes, absolutely. We've had thousands of students, so that's no issue. That's it. Look,
probably a better word, court-ordered.
When they're court-ordered, parents are often court-ordered to do a parenting after separation course. We get tons of referrals from lawyers, from ICLs, it's a parenting after separation course. So yes, it's fine.
There's a question here, and I think this might be the last one. Two quick last ones. In a case with a mediated parenting plan, what can you do if one party won't sign? Well, there's probably nothing the mediator can do. You could go back to mediation and discuss, maybe what is it that they're unhappy with? Maybe that's what the issue is now. Maybe something's changed for them, or they feel unsure. That could be a discussion. The mediator can't make them sign.
That's like a post-mediation kind of consideration. So, I talked a lot about, it's actually a really good point. It's a really good question, because I talked a lot about like the preparation work in getting you ready for mediation, so that when it comes to mediation that you're ready for that. But the fact is that after mediation, people do change their mind. They get they actually, like where I talked about the fight, flight and freeze response, they can leave a mediation and have a little panic attack and think I've done the wrong thing, or I don't agree to that, or I'm just an obstructive jerk, and so I'm going to just make life difficult for you. There can be a whole lot of things that happen there, but you know, being able to check back in with them and say, hey, well, what's going on? That can also be really helpful.
And it looks like the last question is about the length of the, can you see this one that's from N section 60I only lasts 12 months, but
yeah, that
doesn't mean you need to proceed to court, correct?
Correct.
You don't need to proceed to court. If the reason for issuing the certificate was not DV related potentially, you could wait a couple of months and attempt mediation again. If there's nothing stopping you from attempting mediation, and at any time, even in your proceedings, if you are in court, if the two of you want to go back to mediation, you tell your lawyers, or if you're self-represented, you request an adjournment, and for what reason and how long. You might need it for a month. And the court, of course, wants you to make a decision if you can. They don't want to. It's a last resort. They give you every opportunity to agree. They want you to agree. You're the parents. So just, you don't have to wait a couple of months. You can go back again if the two of you agree.
Yeah.
I think that might be nearly everything. There could be some more things, but we might have to leave it there.
Look, I'll just say to everybody,
someone's written.
Yeah, don't bombard me, everyone, tomorrow. But my details are on the website, and I've actually got a couple of busy days coming up this week. But if you call our number, we can give you a booking link for just like a free chat option. Just give me a call and have a quick chat to me, and book in the time. I'm happy to have a chat to you. I do offer support to, well, any of my students or clients or what have you, and that service is free. I don't charge for that time. I'm, you know, very readily available to people, so please feel free to give me a call if you've got any questions.
I forgot to put up the polls at the beginning, and there'll be a survey at the end that I think will just pop up as it ends. Hopefully, I haven't done a survey before, but hopefully it does. And because somehow I have lost control of what's going on, can people please enter, or they're filling out this poll. I'll just give it another couple of seconds for people to fill out. Can you see, Jasmine, because you're co-host at the moment, my screen's gone all funny. Can you see up the top where it says polls? Can you see that option?
I can. No, I can see the poll that's up there with the participants.
Okay, I'm just going to end that poll. And then I want to just launch another poll, just as a mediation attendance. Why isn't that one going?
I'm so glad somebody thought it was a link to the Robbie Williams.
Relaunch poll. And then I'm going to, so we're relaunching another one about just mediation. If you've been before, we're just interested to know if you've attended, and how many times you've attended. This is something really useful for Jasmine and really useful for me in my family law, not just in my work, but also for the group to see. I'm seeing 4 or more. There's very few people. The majority, I'll just end this poll pretty quickly. For that one, no, there's still people answering that one. And then I'll just end that poll, and then I will just ask for the last question about the Section 60I certificate. Oh, I hope no one's asking what's a Section 60I certificate. Please, if you've ticked that.
I might have had a property matter.
Oh dear.
Listen to all of this.
That's someone. That's someone with a small child and not getting any sleep at all.
No, that's right.
The Section 60I certificate, if you can hear us, is a certificate that, and I'll put the form up tomorrow on the group so you can see what it looks like. Not everybody can give you this. So there's mediators all over the country, but if you want to actually initiate proceedings in the family court, you need to go to a mediator who is an FDR practitioner, and they can actually provide you with this Section 60I certificate, and it'll be ticked whether you're not appropriate to mediate, whether one person didn't turn up. So pretty much you need that certificate to file proceedings so that the court knows, it's one of the pre-action requirements, so that the court knows that you've actually had a chop at resolving it yourself. There's some few exceptions why you wouldn't have one. That might be, say, someone's nicked off with the child to Western Australia and you need a recovery order, something like that, or they're in real danger. And so there's a really dangerous situation, or the child's unsafe. That's another one where the court might act very quickly and you don't need one of these certificates. But that's what they are. I'll pop one up tomorrow. I'll end that poll and I'll just share the results. So, well, this is good. Yes and no for the Section 60I certificate. People went in hoping it would work. So that's actually, nice to know on that one.
Yep.
And then for the participants, we had some people from the legal profession. We've got lots of separated people, no academics. We've got one law student who's going to turn into an awesome family law solicitor. And then there was one person who thought this was a link to the Robbie Williams concert, and they've stayed all the way till the end. That's just fantastic.
Gee,
the mediation questions.
Do I get to meet Robbie Williams for that?
So the majority have tried mediation, 86%. Some haven't. So if you have a dispute, you've got to try mediation. And if you don't know where to go, Jasmine she's pretty booked up actually. I've tried to send a few people to her and they disappointed. But she can also, just type in mediation. Go to the Dispute Resolution Centre of Australia, have a look for some mediators there. And there's something else that you should know, is that there are some retired family court judges and, from the old terms, federal circuit court judges who, when they've finished being a judge, they're like 70, so they've got to retire. Legally, they have to retire from the bench, but they then go, I'm not finished yet, I'm not that old and dottery, and they go back. They can be a barrister, or they might just go back and do mediation, and they vary from, as Jasmine said, they might be 4,000 a day, they might be 10,000 a day for a one, depends on what they're charging. But I think if you're really close to getting something and you can't quite get over the line, get one of those people who are ex-judges, because, you basically got a judge sitting there right in front of you. And don't think that when judges aren't doing your matter that they're not pressing you in a direction either way to try and help you resolve it, even when they're in it. So this mediation one, yes, most people have gone, a few people haven't. Please try it. And this majority only went to one. I think that's a downfall. If you're still in court, I think that's a downfall. Please go and try more.
I think it's a downfall, but I think it's on us.
Can.
I think it's on the mediation industry, to be honest. I don't think that it's been put out there enough, really.
Yeah, I don't think it's put out there enough. And remember, from my commercial days, the rule of thumb was 7 no's before you get a yes.
Yeah.
7 no's. Now, Jasmine, can you see, I'm not actually sure how to do this anymore because for whatever reason, I'm not seeing this as the co-host. Can you see if you launched that survey, or if when people leave, can anyone see that? There's supposed to be some kind of survey that pops up at the end of this.
I can't. I can't see. No, it's just got stop sharing for the polls.
I can't, for whatever reason, I can't see it either.
No,
but,
I can't.
I can't either.
Hang on. I tell a lie.
Go get the books. Get the books, get the water.
No.
Get the book, get the water.
Somebody mute
so
your microphone.
You might, when you leave, see it, or otherwise, maybe it gets sent to you. I don't know. It might be. I'm not sure how this works. I've never done one before. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. A big thank you to Jasmine. I've learned something today. There were things that I learned, and I'm just in awe that Jasmine has spent, you can see, so much time putting this together for this group of people. Nearly 200 people signed up. Over 100 ended up coming in, and then I stopped letting people in because they were slack. Please do not give up on mediation. Think about some of the things that Jasmine said. Please figure out what your issues are. Write them down on a piece of paper before you take them in. find common ground first. And a skilled mediator is always looking in the beginning for where can we find a bit of common ground. So they might be asking you a few weird questions and you think, what's going on here? They're actually looking for common ground first, because if you can find some common ground, you can, there's a chance that you can resolve some of the other things too. My whole first career was as a front-end construction lawyer, and that's what I did, negotiated one thing after another with some really cranky rich people, and some of them, you know, they're on big jobs and big egos. So I know people say, oh, but family law is so emotional, but I can assure you, you put a bunch of experienced and sometimes often male CEOs in a room, and there's a lot of money at stake. I'm not talking like the $200,000 on a house. I'm always astonished when people can't negotiate that. Of tens of millions of dollars, that there is some ego and some emotions flying around that room. Please don't go in with boundaries or thinking that when you're trying to mediate something that you're coming from a position. If you're coming from a particular position, then you have to move from it, and people are reluctant to move from their position. Go in and look at, you know, what the facts are. If you want to argue about the house or argue about stuff about the kids, write down some of the things about the child. Like if you think the child has a need, well, say this is the medical opinion, and talk about whatever that thing that the child might need, rather than just saying, well, I think they should go to the specialist and the other person thinks they shouldn't go to the specialist. Focus back in on, and I keep focus such the wrong word, center back in on that child. And it is a wanky thing to say, but instead of putting your kid in the middle of a fight, think about putting them in the center of your concern. I think when I was a construction lawyer, I didn't have any of these wanky things to say, and I was allowed to be much quirkier. But in family law, it's a bit more serious, even though I try to
we have to watch our P's and Q's a little bit when we really want to be saying something else.
So thank you. Thank you, absolutely, everybody for turned up. I'm so glad you did, and we'll put the slides link to. Jasmine, are you going to put that on your website in a few days? Is that somewhere you can put in the resources section of your website?
Yes, I will be doing something with it and putting it somewhere, probably on the website. If anybody wants a copy of it, they can just email us via the website as well.
Well, what I'll do is I will put a link up, and then it saves you being bombarded. I'll do it in Family Law 101, and it's something that we will probably share every month as new people pop in.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for your attention.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Bye.